Hi everyone, and welcome back to Black Rattle Life. It's been a while since we've had a chance to do a video, and I have to say I've been struggling with editing this one. When we started building our house, we had no idea that we were going to be doing a YouTube channel, and we made all the wrong mistakes. We had taken pictures to put up on Facebook to share with friends and family, and we took everything in portrait mode, not landscape mode. So it's been a learning process. Plus, we've also, since early December, been on a rush to get our daughter in her house. She had less than adequate housing, and we had the opportunity to build a house for her and get her in before the winter hit. So we put a real drive on, and once we got started, then we had to finish in order to be able to get permits for her to actually live in the house. So it's been a long haul, and hopefully this will be part of another project that we do once we get finished with this house build. So thank you for your patience, and I hope you enjoy what we're doing today. Again, for those of you who have been here before, I thank you for your patience, and those who are new to the channel, welcome. I'm Dave, and this is Black Rattle Life.
Don't care if I'm here or I'm gone. The moon pulls waves like it's...
We're looking to build our house, and today we're going to talk about putting the trusses up. The trusses form the roof of the house, so the ribs that the sheathing and cladding go on the roof to actually close it in. And after building this house in the winter and having to shovel it out, I am so looking forward to having a roof over my head so that maybe I don't have to shovel it out again. The trusses are something that comes in later in the building process. You have your pilings, your foundation, your floors, you stand your walls up, you sheathe the walls and get everything braced, and then you put your trusses on the roof. But their part of the story really begins early on in the process, because trusses are one of the things that needs engineering, and they need a fairly long lead time for most companies to be able to deal with. So as soon as you get your blueprints or your set of plans, whichever way you've gone, you want to contact a company that makes trusses to build them for you, because they'll have to have your blueprints to do the takeoff drawing, decide how to design them, because a truss is designed in a way to transfer the loads. We've talked about this before, that your footing in your foundation, your walls, your piers, everything has to transfer load straight up from the ground, actually to the peak of your house. So everything, all of those weight loads have to be designed to fit in the right ways. When we got our plans, we sent our blueprints to the company. They sent it to their engineer, they got it designed, and then they came back with the time frame and the price for us. And they were telling us that it was going to be 3 to 4 months before we were able to get our trusses. With a small build, we thought we would be held up by the trusses. Lucky for us, unlucky for other people, where we live in a very small area, there was a couple of major highway projects that were taking all of the available cement capacity from the concrete plants, and people were having trouble getting their foundations in. That pushed a lot of larger builds back, and the truss company was more than happy to get us our trusses. So from the time we put in our down payment on the trusses and sent our information in, we were really only about 3.5 weeks from the time we ordered until we got our trusses, instead of the 3 to 4 months. It worked out really well for us, because then we were able to get the trusses close to where our build was going to be, and all the other materials that came in delivered by truck could be in a different area. If trusses are heavy and awkward, and that meant we didn't have to carry them far, we could situate them in a much better location for us. So that actually worked out quite well. And as our luck would have it, the truck that delivered the materials and the truck that delivered the trusses both arrived within 5 minutes of each other. The hardware guy had just backed in, started unstrapping the load and getting the crane ready to winch everything off into the driveway. And we asked him nicely. He was quite good about it, actually. I don't know if he was as happy as he let on, but he was really good about it. And he hauled his truck out, let the trusses come in, and they unloaded them, which we didn't get a video of it, I don't believe, but it's kind of interesting to see them unload trusses, because they come on a flatbed truck that slopes down with a roller on the back. And once they have all the straps off it, the truck driver backs up and hammers on the brakes really, really quickly, and the trusses slide off all in one big package. So you need a fairly flat area without any roots or stumps sticking up that are going to break any of the webs in it. But where they're so strapped together in a bundle, they're pretty durable, and that's how they unload most of them if you don't have a crane on site, which we didn't. When the trusses arrive, they come with an information package, and this information package has a lot of information, as it's in the name. There's a set of the blueprints, the drawings signed off by an engineer. That'll keep your building official happy if you have to have building inspections and permits. It also gives your blocking layouts, your nailing instructions, spacing, and it gives very, very clear directions to make sure that you don't turn your trusses backwards. We have a house that's 16 feet wide with a 10-foot wide deck, so the webs were designed to sit on the walls. So if we had turned them backwards, the load-bearing portions of it would have come in between the walls and really seriously impacted the security and the safety of the trusses. So it's very important to look at your layout and make sure you've got them lined up as well as you can. It's so important. It also gives a lot of information, like how your hurricane clips have to go on, storm clips, whatever your jurisdiction calls them, whatever you call them in your area. They're the metal clips that fasten it to the roof. Any bracing requirements that you have to have that have to be left in perfect. And your building official, when they come to inspect, will look at all those things, and you will have to change things if you didn't do it according to the engineer's drawings. There are two types of trusses that came with our house. Your build, if it's more complicated, may have several different types, different lengths for valleys and things, but we have a straight, simple run to build a house, and our trusses had two types. One, there's the end trusses, the two end trusses, which have upright braces on them for fastening the sheathing on the gable ends of your house, and then all the interior ones, which have a web that are designed to transfer loads to the tops of the walls, which then transfers down to the ground. This weight transfer is really important because it helps keep the snow on your roof and out of your basement. And as much as I hated shoveling snow out on the floors while we were building, I would really, really hate to have to dig my house out of the basement by putting my trusses up wrong. Storm clips go on at every wall, and the requirement in the engineering drawings was to have the storm clips on the interior portion of every wall. So it's fastened to the inside of the house and to the trusses. The storm clips prevent uplift. So the web of the truss transfers the weight load from snow, any wind forces, and just the dead weight of the house down to the screw piles and support the house. But the storm clips prevent any wind uplift. So where we have a covered deck with a roof on it, the wind blowing against the hill would shear up into the roof of the house and could potentially lift it off. A lot of houses fail during hurricanes and major windstorms by having the roofs lift off. And having storm clips on helps to prevent that. It anchors it down. And screw piles that we have are your foundation when you build. They're all anchored in such a way that the ground weight prevents all of those from being pulled up. So the storm clips are very important for the long-term safety and security of your home. Trusses come fastened in bundles, and they're strapped together with plastic strapping at 5 or 6 or more locations on it. Keeps them very strong and secure. And we kept them strapped together while we were getting the house built, while they laid on the ground, because it wasn't perfectly level and flat. And having them completely strapped together kept them from warping. Like the sun, the rain, the snow laid on them, they get wet, they dry. You don't want them twisting because you have to have them straight in order to work well. So we kept them strapped together, and when the time came to put our trusses up, we were very fortunate that we had a neighboring couple who had just finished their house. They offered to come and help us raise our trusses, and they had some good information for us that I probably may not have picked out of my information bundle, because it was in the fine print, but it was very important and would have failed our inspection. They were also an extra body because, the information package on the trusses said each one weighed 110 pounds, but I think the information lied, or sitting on the ground, having been snowed and rained on, they soaked up a little more moisture because they are heavy and awkward. And I've said before, we're in our 60s, and handling all that at height is more of a challenge than we thought it would be. In order to get the trusses raised to the roof where we were on a hill, we put two 16-foot 2x10s against the wall to form a ramp. Then we put our staging up on the inside of the building, and the two husbands went inside and stood on the staging to pull the trusses up the ramp. There's other ways to do it, but where we were on a hill, the downward side of the house, some people put a 2x4 scabbed on the outside edges and hang the tails of the trusses on those and lift them up. But it was a longer lift than we could reach because it's about 18 feet from the ground to the edge of the rim joist. So that was not an option for us, and a crane was a little too expensive. So we decided to do it the old-fashioned way and strong-arm them up on top of the walls. We double-checked the orientation of the trusses to make sure that they were facing the right way, and as luck would have it, the delivery guy had set them up the right way. We tried to get it right, but being novice builders, you never know when you're going to screw up and you get things exactly backwards, but they were delivered the right way. Luckily for us, the two end trusses were on top, so one of those end trusses went up first. The second one was set aside to go up last on the roof because we were pulling them up over the end of the house. So the husbands went up and stood on platforms on the staging at the edge of the end wall and lowered ropes with carabiners on them down over the side. The wives flipped the trusses up against the ramps, fastened the ropes around the top cord of the trusses with carabiners, and the other husband and I pulled them up the ramps onto the top of the roof. Then we pushed them down the length of the house with 2x4s, creating a couple of piles on top of the walls that we could stand up later. Then it was just wash, rinse, repeat until we had all but 3 of the trusses up on the roof, 2 of the standard trusses and 1 of the end trusses. And the reason we didn't put the last 3 up was because when they lay down on the roof, the trusses are about 6 feet tall and the spacing is 2 feet apart for each truss. So if we had taken them all up, then we would have ended up trying to push them off the end or stand them up and wiggle them back into place. So it was easier to put most of them up, get them stood up, and then just pull the other ones up and put them in place as we came to it. That worked out well for us. I'm sure contractors with large crews and more experience have better ways of doing it. This worked out well for us, and we had the trusses stood up in roughly a day. Once we had most of the trusses on the roof, then it was time to stand them up. So we started with the end truss that was farthest away from the pile where we pulled them up. And we slid it down, stood it up. But before we did that, we took a couple of 2x6s and fastened them to the outside of the wall with screws. This gave us a brace to stand it up against. And we also spaced it with sheathing. Because the 2x6s were fastened to the outside of the sheathing, we needed another little block of it to keep the spacing the same as it went up so that they didn't lean. So then it was push the trusses out against the outside wall, the braces that were there, measure both ends to make sure that the overhang, which in our case was a 24-inch overhang, so 2 feet on either end. So a person on each end measured them, made sure they had them right, and then we tacked them in with screws to make sure we had them right but not permanent at this point. We stood them up, made sure it was level in the center where the braces were, made sure the braces were level, and we tacked them into that with screws. So we had our first truss up. It was level, square, and plumb as far as we knew. But you're going to be doing a lot of adjusting after, so you don't want to put nails in them at this point. Our engineer drawing required our trusses to be 24 inches on center. So once we had the end truss up, the next truss was, the center of that truss was 24 inches from the outside edge of the wall. All the other trusses were 24 inches center to center. So the spacing between the end truss and the first truss on each end is slightly different than all the others. All the others would end up being 14.5 inches center to center or edge to edge. So you can cut a block and put it up, but just be very aware that if your block is just off by a 16th or a 32nd of an inch, you can be out by an inch at the other end. So that's another reason to use screws to tack things in, so you can do a final fitting afterwards to make sure everything is actually honestly perfect. So we put all of our trusses up, tacked them into place, and we used strapping along the top cords screwed to the tops to brace them in place to keep them from waving around too much. So we worked our way down the house, tacking them to the tops of the walls, putting strapping on the top. And once we got to the space where the last 3 went, we pulled each truss up, slid it into place on the bottom cord, lined it up, tacked it in, did the next one, and then finally finished off with the last end truss. And at that point, you know, all of us being in our 60s when we built this house, and multiple trips up and down ladders, back and forth, pushing trusses, lifting heavy weights, and a little bit of cursing and swearing, I'm sure, happened as we went. This was a very good place to end for the day. We had everything tacked up with screws. I found out that night why you don't build with screws, why they're dangerous. So it was, we got lucky. We got very lucky. We didn't lose our house, but it was close, I think. That night, while we had everything done, we were asleep in our beds in the house next door where we lived. Major windstorm came up. It was a nor'easter, which is, you know, similar to a hurricane We always say here in Nova Scotia, a nor'easter is only different than a hurricane in that it didn't hit Florida first. But it's actually, it starts in the mid-Atlantic, strong northeast winds, hurricane force winds. I spent a lot of time through the night with a flashlight looking out the window of the place we live to see if everything was still standing, and you could see the trusses waving in the wind, and it was scary for us. We made a few trips over with our raincoats on. Hopefully everything was there, and it looked all right. So we kept going back to sleep, and when we got up the next morning, the sun was out, and we breathed a sigh of relief that we had dodged a bullet. But we didn't know how close we came until we got up on the staging and looked, and almost all of the screws holding the strapping in place had snapped. We use deck screws, not structural screws, and deck screws are good at holding deck boards down in place. They're not good at holding a lot of structure, and they'll snap off where the threads end at most places. So it was really scary for us to go up on the roof and find that most stuff was just balanced and freestanding, and we came that close. One more gust of wind could have potentially taken all the trusses over, damaged the walls, and we could have ended up starting from scratch again with the whole build, which would have been disheartening to say the least. Before we started fastening the trusses into place permanently, we had a few lag bolts on our deck posts and our beam that while we had the staging up, it was a really good time to get those put in, because once the trusses went into place, there was going to be a lot more structure in place and harder to get the tools in. And you're working from a comfortable height from a platform, working at chest level. It's better than working off a ladder and trying to drive a 3-inch lag bolt into a bracket. So we got those few things done, and then it was time to line the trusses up. Another thing about screws is when you put them in the wood and you have rain or ice or anything like that, the wood swells up around the screws, makes them hard to get out, and ice gets in the holes, and your drill bits or your impact bits won't go in the holes thoroughly. So it's really hard to get things apart once you start. It sounds good in practice, but ended up being a pry bar and a dead blow hammer became my friends to get things apart and get them moved where I wanted. And at around the same time, while we were getting some of the small jobs and waiting for our friends to come over and help us with the final installation of the trusses, I cut out the floor, the sills around the doorway. So when you stand your walls up, you have a bottom sill, and you usually run that across the doorway opening and then cut it out later. Gave me a chance to do a little more chainsaw carpentry, which is good therapy when you're frustrated with the build process. You got to have a little fun once in a while. Melinda calls our dead blow hammer Mr. Fix-It, and that's how she labeled it in our Facebook posts to friends, because you do actually use it a lot. A dead blow hammer is a plastic hammer that's hollow in the center and filled with sand or beads, and when you hit it, it doesn't bounce back, but it's got a wide face on it that doesn't mar the wood and put dents in everything. So it's got a lot of weight like a stone hammer, but it doesn't damage things like a stone hammer would. When we started placing the boards, we made sure that the end trusses, the ones with the upright studs, were lined perfectly so that the overhang was even on both sides in the corners. Then we put a block of wood on each end and ran a string down the length of the house. Pulled it tight from block to block on each end truss. That way we could measure the offset to make sure that the string was 1.5 inches from each truss, and we could adjust them back and forth a little bit to make sure that everything was even. This is important because it makes sure that your fascia boards and any of your edge trim that you're going to be putting on later look straight and you don't have wavy edges to your roof. It's a shame to go through all that work and then look up at it and say, wow, that looks like crap. And you don't want that. Once we had the first side of the house all lined up perfectly straight, then we did the same on the other side, put the blocks on the end trusses, ran the string and measured. And we were really pleasantly surprised that there was very little movement that had to be made. The company that we dealt with was excellent. They were called Atlas Trusses, and the trusses were, honestly, almost every one of them was dead on. We had maybe a 1/16 of an inch on one or two of them. Might have been able to get away with it, split the difference. 32nd of an inch wouldn't have given you much wave, but it's better to do it right. And the other thing that you want to do is take a minimum 4-foot level or straight edge of some sort. Don't trust a piece of 2x4 because everything is wavy. Looks like hockey sticks, some of it. But take a good straight edge, 4-foot or 6-foot level, and lay it on top of your trusses and work your way down the house to make sure that you don't have any humps in your roof. Because sometimes if you have a little piece of something gets under it or a nail lifts the truss up, you'll have a little bit of it, and it'll show up when you put your roofing on, because you'll see one little truss sticks up and there'll be a hump, and you'll see that for the rest of your life probably. It's going to be there for a lot of years, so may as well get it done right the first time. Once everything was leveled and squared, then it was time to put the storm clips on. And those actually fasten your trusses to your roof. We toe-nailed nails in with an air nailer along the top of the roof, but we also put the storm clips on, and that's what really firms the wall up. And each storm clip took 10 high tensile specialty screws or nails. We used nails and ours with a palm nailer, but you can buy strong ties or strong nails that are made for the purpose that will pass it. If you don't use the right type of nail or screw, you will fail inspection because it's not safe for it. And if you'll notice in the video, we use a couple of different types of storm clips, because the bag of storm clips that came with the trusses went into my storage shed that I built. It's a portable garage, and God knows where they went. I have no idea. We couldn't find them, so we ended up having to make a run to the hardware store. And like I said, we're in small areas. They didn't have a lot of them, and we had to buy 2 different types to get enough to do our roof. But it's going to be covered up by the walls and the ceilings, sheathing. You'll never see it again, so it doesn't really matter what kind you use, but in the building process, it just looks a little odd. We also put our bracing on the end trusses, which required us to put a piece of wood. They called for a 2x4, minimum 2x4, across the top of the wall plate up against the base of the truss. So you nail down through the piece of wood into the top plate of your wall, and then you nail in through the bottom cord of the truss into that same brace, and that holds it steady on the ends. We decided to go with a 2x6 because that would give us an 1.5 inch overhang on the top of the wall, and that would give us something to nail our strapping to for insulation and drywall when we got to that point. So it's well worth it to go a little bit of an overhang, and it'll make your life a little easier down the road. So our friend that helped us, who had built the house, asked us what was required for strong backs, and this was the part that I missed in the drawing, because it's a very small end of a 2x4. So there was a requirement to run one line of 2x4 on both sides on the inside cords of the trusses down at a certain measurement. So we had to measure down from the peak and mark it on the trusses, and then you'd put 2x4s one under, one over, and overlap them on the trusses that you came to, and that tied the center together, so it took the flex out of them if there was any load. It's the same as putting floor bracing in between your floor joists when you do your floor. It keeps the load from twisting the structure member and failing under load. Once we had the trusses all up and nailed into place, then it was time to put the 2x6 fascia board across the end that everything was going to nail to, and that keeps the ends sturdy and gives you a nailing surface. Now with a 2-foot overhang, it's a hard reach, and our land was not graded. It's hilly, it's rocky, there's still stumps there. So I set the staging up on the inside of the house and leaned against the wall and reached out and fastened the fascia board to the outside with nails. On one of the moves, I actually forgot to lock the wheels on the staging, and as I leaned over the wall with the 2x6 to nail it, the staging rolled back and left me hanging by my belt buckle over the edge of the roof. Melinda, alerted to my screams, came and pushed the staging back so that I could get my feet under it, and breathed a sigh of relief and continued on the job. So safety first. You want to go home at the end of the day, and you want to be able to live in the house you're building. With the trusses installed and finally firmly nailed into place, the house takes on its final shape, and it's only an outline. It's the skeleton of a house, but you can actually see every part of how the house is going to look. You've got walls, you've got floors, You've got window openings now, and the roof is outlined by the trusses, so you know that once you get the sheathing, it's going to be great. Our next step is going to be getting the sheathing on, and I'm really looking forward to that, because once that's done, the snow won't come down through to the floor. It will create other problems, as you'll see in later videos, but it's good to not have to work with everything, and it's going to make it a lot easier for us. Our tools can stay on the construction site, because up until this point, we had to worry about rain or snow, and we had to, at the end of every day, we had to pack up the compressors, the air nailers, all the power tools, everything that was in cardboard boxes, all the nails, and lug them back, store them away somewhere so that it was going to be safe and dry so that they didn't get damaged. And this was going to be a point where we finally had enough we'll have enough sheathing on it to give us a secure, dry place to work. And it's going to make it a lot easier once we can put a ceramic heater or some kind of a heating source in there, and get a place to warm your hands up and take the chill off a little bit, because working in the winter is cold, but there's no flies. If you stayed till the end of the video, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And if you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing. It helps the algorithm find other people who are looking for the same thing. And if you know somebody who's thinking about building a house, or is inadequately housed and wants to get into something of their own and build some equity, please consider sharing this with them, because the best way to get into a house is to build your own place. It's better to profit from your own sweat equity than it is to pay somebody else to do the work for you. We built this house in 9 months and saved roughly $350,000. And as always, I'm not a professional builder. What I'm showing is meant for reference purpose of my experiences only, and that you can build your own house. Please make sure you follow all the building codes, all the safety regulations, and follow whatever directions you're given, engineering drawings, because you want to be safe, you want your house to stand, and you want to be there for the future. So thanks again. I'm Dave, and thank you for watching Black Rattle Life.
Water whispers to the shore, soft and shy. Trees lean in, trading secrets.